What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Sorry for the delay. We had a little bit of technical difficulties, but that's okay. We got stuff figured out.
Yes.
I'm super excited to talk to Stacey Peck today. This is season 6, episode 15, and I've been hassling you about doing this for a while because you manage one of my favorite songwriters on the planet. So,
Right. Yes.
um, but thank you so much for making time and doing this thing.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm very glad to be here. Thanks for asking me.
Yeah. You know what's crazy too is I was thinking about this. This is a first because I don't think I've had any like industry artist management people on. It's all been like,
Okay.
songwriters, guitarists, pianists, drummers, gear manufacturers, people like that. And I was like, I need more like people like you on the show to
Yeah,
kind of
totally. You
pull
should.
the
Yeah, you should start having a ton of industry people, like, move through all the different lanes, like publishing and music supervisor and producers, mixers, all that. I'm sure you have producers and mixers all the time, but
not really. I mean, a
yeah,
couple of them, but like not a ton. So,
yeah.
but this is great.
A&R.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that would be cool too, because there's so much like gray area with that stuff when people don't understand it.
totally.
Um,
Yeah.
And I wanted to get into like some of the industry stuff with you because I'm really curious about your take on like the current state of the industry versus late 90s to now kind of thing.
Sure. Yeah, yeah.
Um, but I wanted to ask you because like I want to ask everybody this question, but like people came to music for some reason, some way, shape, or form you fell in love with music. But like what's like your earliest musical memory?
Um, I mean, I have many. One that I actually do like to tell is that when I was a kid, I had a little teeny tiny little record player and some 45s that like my parents probably bought for me. And there was this song by the Hermits called I'm Into Something Good. And I like wore that 45 out. Like I think I played it like, 6,000 times in a row. Um, and that was kind of sort of like one of my first experiences of like me being in my room and having my own music device and my own playable piece of music and playing it for myself versus like my dad or my parents, playing music for us. So I think that's potentially one of my earliest memories of being obsessed with a song and just playing it like so much.
Nice, nice.
Yeah.
That was my first concert. My dad took my brother and sister and I to see. It was Herman's Hermits and the
Yeah.
Monkees.
Oh, no
So
way.
yeah,
That's pretty
totally.
cool.
It was
Yeah.
pretty rad. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so let me jump into like, so that got you hooked into music,
I mean,
basically.
from there on, it was like everything piling on top of that. I mean, my dad, he was obsessed with mainly country music, but also like Elton John and Fleetwood Mac. And as soon as like probably middle school ish, after I got over kind of sort of like what was just in the house and started listening to the radio more, like I just became like a pure like pop and like hair metal fan. And then in high school I moved on to like 120 minutes and being
Yeah.
obsessed with somebody like PJ Harvey.
Yeah.
So it like all just like kind of sort of like grew from like I guess that initial moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that you and Blue and I are pretty close in age, so that makes sense. Like everything that you're
Yes.
saying is like, yep, 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 yep. Um,
Yeah.
so did you like as far as like where did you grow up?
I grew up in Western Massachusetts.
Okay, okay,
Yeah.
cool. Um, which I'm familiar with. I mean, I went to Berkeley, so I
Yeah.
lived out there and I lived in Salem, which is great.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah.
But been out to Western Mass a lot. But
Yeah. I
okay,
mean, I'm like
so
very Western Mass, like where people don't even think Massachusetts exists. Yeah.
that's such a beautiful drive though. If you go out
It
through the
is.
Berkshires, like my buddy lives in Saratoga Springs. So
Yeah.
I would like drive through the Berkshires to go out to see him, and it's like the most amazing drive.
It's gorgeous out there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really awesome. Um, okay, so that all started out. So were your parents like like you said your dad was country, but like
Yes.
was there any other like pop music like in the house like growing
Well,
up?
like I said, so like Elton John, Elvis, Fleetwood Mac, Dolly Parton,
Mm,
who is
I
behind
saw that. That's awesome.
and But yeah, my parents didn't really, I mean, my mom doesn't really listen to that much music. I got my love of music from my dad. And, I mean, like one of his heroes is like Johnny Cash or Willie Nelson. And so I listened to a ton of that growing up. But the pop, like getting into stuff like Madonna and Prince, that all came just from being, a kid in the 80s and just finding it myself. And obviously, it's like you couldn't, not grow up and not know about Madonna. So,
Yeah, totally.
yeah, but yeah, my parents weren't into too much pop. Yeah.
Right. That's totally what I meant, is that side
Yeah.
of the music. Because I think it's funny, because it's like I talk about this a lot on the show of everyone's influences. I love to hear what people listen to and what brought them to where they are.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because a lot of that like 70s like music that we love, and like Elton John and people like that,
Yeah.
like Tumbleweed Connection is one of my favorite records of all time, like, period.
Yeah. hmm
Um, but like I skipped, it's funny, like I think I skipped the 80s in a way. Like
Oh, really?
I don't know what happened, because I like didn't really get into music until grunge hit me in the
Oh, okay.
face.
Yeah. I
So
had a
like what
grunge
was
phase. Yeah.
yeah, so like what happened for you at that moment, like when that stuff was popping?
Well, so that was interesting because I was very into, well, it was weird because I was very into Madonna and Prince and In Excess, which was like a range of pop for me. But then I was very into like Motley Crue and White Snake and White Line and a ton of hair metal bands like Guns N' Roses. So, I mean, when Pearl Jam happened and Nirvana happened, I mean, I just dove right in on that. Like, I was all in on Pearl Jam. I was like in their fan club and probably saw them like 10 times in the early 90s. I became a really big fan of Tool, and I was like a Lollapalooza gal. I went to all the first Lollapaloozas that happened. So I've kind of sort of loved like all the different musical phases that have come through my lifetime, and late 90s going into like indie rock and stuff like Pavement
Oh
and
yeah.
really hipster indie rock bands like the Shins and stuff like that. Like I fell hard for that as well. And I think that's been really kind of cool, is like having all that diversity kind of sort of hit me at different phases, and it kind of sort of allows you to like um still love what you loved in the past, but then jump into like this new musical awakening or whatever, that you can kind of sort of be like, oh well, now I get all these like 25 new bands to like obsess over and get excited about. So yeah, I've loved experiencing new whether they're genres or movements as they might be. I love jumping and diving in. Like I had a very heavy like drum and bass phase in college. So I just kind of sort of, my mind is always like never kind of sort of shutting the new thing out. Like if I like it, I want to like experience it.
Consume.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Do you think that's a prerequisite for doing what you do for a living? Like, do you think you have to love all styles of music and really be open-minded?
I mean, maybe. It's interesting because there's a lot of people that I know that work in music and are successful in music and probably don't love all styles. So, I mean, I think it's probably just unique to the person. But for me, I think that has been important, and helped shape my overall love of music and desire to work in music and work around creative people. So, yeah, it's probably different for everybody.
Yeah. When
Yeah.
did that desire hit you? Like, when were you like, "I wanna be involved in this in some way, shape, or form"? Because it's like it's not a
Yeah.
I mean, especially as early as you got into it. It's like at the time, you know
Mhm.
I mean,
Well,
the
I got
internet
into
has done so much, but, not
totally.
not probably when you jumped into it head first.
Totally. I mean, I started working in music in college. So I went to UMass Amherst and immediately joined our student concert productions. And I was a part of their staff for all 4 years at college. And I started off as a promotions manager. And it was back when our college music entertainment budget was fairly large. And we were, teenagers slash, 21 somethings. And we were given like these huge budgets to like play music industry. And so we got to book the band, promote the shows, set up the stages, do the hospitality. And so my first love was actually in event production, and um, had, bands like Sunny Day Real Estate, and
Nice.
um, Blues Traveler. Like we had all the different kinds of bands, Redman. Like these are some of the concerts that I remember producing back when I was at UMass. And from there, from like the college campus experience, I started working in Northampton for the area promoter. I was working at Pearl Street nightclub doing like marketing and promotions, and kind of sort of just like everything was again like one more step at a time. And then basically after college, I was either going to move to New York City or Boston. I wanted to move to a big city, and I ended up moving to Boston to work in music marketing for Newberry Comics.
Nice.
And so I got hired straight out of college to, move to Boston, lived in Somerville, and worked in the marketing team in the main office, and helped spearhead like relaunching the website and doing in stores. And I was in charge of throwing all of our company events. And so that's kind of sort of like where I ended up for like 8 years after college in music, and working with independent record labels, and making sure that their album releases were being promoted through all of our stores. And then basically, Bleu came into my life, and he asked me if I wanted to manage him. And I was kind of I'd never really thought of that before, and what my next move was going to be after Newberry Comics. But I basically thought about it, and I essentially dove into band management, completely virgin and blind, and was just a leap of faith that that was something that I wanted to do. And that was in 2005 when I started managing Bleu. And, here we are in 2023, and I'm still doing music management. So,
It's crazy.
yeah.
Man, I can't believe, I mean, that is how did you run into him? Did you see him at a show and then you got to talking and
Yeah, I mean, the backstory is quite personal in the sense that, like, he and I, were in a relationship at that time. I think the
Mhm.
people who know us well enough know that part of the story. But we really connected creatively and as friends. And we were both living in Boston at the time, and both interested in changing up our lives in a big way. A bunch of my friends had moved from Boston to LA, after either, graduating college or spending a certain amount of years in Boston, then realizing that they wanted to move to LA. And so we both kind of took a leap of faith as well, in that sense, where we moved from Boston to LA together. And yeah, I mean, we've always gelled when it comes to creativity and like, what we think is awesome.
Mhm.
Um, and so, and, I mean, he graduated from Berkeley with a degree in, the music industry, the business of the music industry. So he was actually one of my first, teachers about publishing deals and stuff like that, because he knew terms and like I didn't. And, but quickly evolved because I found some manager mentors when I moved out to LA. I found a producer manager mentor, and an artist manager mentor, and kind of sort of asked them a ton of dumb questions early on in early days, and then just really just learned how to be a music manager kind of sort of on the job.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
incredible. I mean, trial by
yeah,
fire is the way to do it, right?
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
And I'm
yeah.
sure you guys taught each other both stuff. I'm sure that you had a ton to,
No, totally.
teach him and yeah.
Yeah. And I knew a lot about event production and event management and promotions. And I knew a lot about like the record retail side of things. So I did have some foundation, obviously, of the music industry itself. I also in college, I didn't mention this, but I was a college rep for Virgin Records.
Oh, cool.
So what I did for them was, albums are coming out, and I basically was in charge of like the college market that I was in, and like making sure, radio stations knew about the album coming out, and record retailer at the time, they knew that the album was coming out, and like setting up like listening parties and all that kind of stuff. So I had a good foundation before I jumped into management.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you have a ton of experience with all that stuff. I mean, even the stuff in college, I mean, that's like a pretty good preparatory, shove you
Yeah.
out there and get you doing it, kind of thing
Totally.
immediately. That's
Yeah.
awesome. I
Yeah.
wish my college would have had stuff like that. Like there was nothing like that, so that's
It was
pretty
amazing.
nice.
It was very cool. And we had like a clubhouse on campus. Like we had offices, and it was
Nice.
pretty cool. Yeah.
That's awesome. Was there
Yeah.
any bands that you landed or you guys landed that you brought in that you were starstruck with when you were in college?
That's a good question. I mean, Sunny Day Real Estate is a show that pops out that like we were all like so in awe that we were like bringing Sunny Day Real Estate to the campus. Um, it was weird. I think I was too young to be starstruck yet.
Right.
Like I think I didn't understand, and also like stardom was different back then. It wasn't the way that it is now, where it's like
Mhm.
so hyped up. I mean, we were excited about every show, like whether it was a genre we all liked or it was a genre that we were booking, because, we wanted to make sure that we brought in all genres throughout the year. And so whether it was my favorite genre or not, like we loved what we were doing. So anything we booked, we absolutely loved the shows, like I'm not really a jam band fan, but like we would have jam bands and stuff like that. So
Did you
yeah.
guys have like early on, did you have Fish come through there and stuff?
No Fish.
Okay.
Yeah. I would have done a claim to fame about that one. Like Blues Traveler was probably like the biggest. I don't know if they're a jam band, but I put them in the jam band category.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like the whole Horde tour, like Spin Doctors and
Exactly.
Blues Traveler and all those people who weren't
Yeah.
grunge, but they weren't this other thing. It's like
Exactly. Yeah.
I feel about kind of how I feel about Blind Melon. Like I feel like Blind Melon gets
Right.
a bad rap. I love that band,
I love. Yeah. They're great.
but it's like
Yep.
it's so weird because like where do you place them in the mix of all that stuff that was going on? It's hard
Totally.
to,
Yeah. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know.
They don't really fit. Yeah. I mean, they maybe fit. Do they fit in like the weirdo jellyfish category of things? Like.
Maybe, maybe. You know
Yeah.
what's weird about that is that so the first time I met Blue was at when I was a student at Berkeley
Yeah.
because I went much older. I was 28 when I went in there,
Okay.
and
Oh, wow, okay.
I already had my undergrad degree from another university.
Yeah.
And long story short, my wife was going to get her doctorate up in Boston, and I was like, "What am I going to do?" And I just applied to Berkeley, and it ended up that she didn't get in, and I got in. So we're like, "All right, let's go." But I was in like my final semester, like advanced lyric writing class, and
Yeah.
Blue came in. I didn't even know who he was. He came in and he was like presenting to the class about his career and about the music industry and everything. It was awesome. I was just like,
Yeah.
holy crap. And he played the video from the LEO record, the
Oh,
claymation
wow,
video.
okay. Yeah.
And I knew about Jellyfish and no one else in the class did.
Yeah.
So then like I felt like the
Right.
rest of the time he was talking to me.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
I was like, oh my God, I like fell in love with his music right the next night. Like that night, I went home after class and bought his record. I bought Watch Pot. That was like right when Watch Pot came out.
Oh, yeah, exactly. So that was, yeah, that we were in LA by that time, and
Okay.
he must have been coming back because he would go back every once in a while to like guest lecture, and
Yeah. It was
yeah.
awesome. And it totally changed my perspective. And that's what made me like want to talk to people like you about like pulling back the veil of what goes on in the industry. Because like
Right.
what I think is great about Berkeley, and people might disagree with me, but what I think is great is that there's no sugarcoating. It's all
Right. Yeah,
like,
yeah.
this is a tough industry. We're going to try to help you understand it so you can go
Yeah.
out and be successful.
It is
Um,
tough.
but yeah,
I
and I'm
agree with
sure
that.
you know that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
how many people are under your wing now? How many bands are under your wing now?
Well, I'm right now I'm saying 2.5.
Okay.
Because I have Blue, and then but he's like 7 bands all in one, because he does Blue stuff. He um writes and produces for film and TV. He's now really diving into being a composer. And, he does production music, and he still writes for Pop Cuts. So he's got like, 10 different things going on at once, always. And then I have Air Traffic Controller, who are an indie rock band from Boston. And then I'm still working with a band called The One and Only People Mover, which is like stoner rock. But right now they're kind of sort of dormant and laying low, and kind of sort of feeling out how we might reintroduce that band to the world. But so right now it's a dormant project, and I'm not constantly, but here and there talking to, new people about potentially working with new clients. So like in the past, for me, having anywhere between 3 to 5 clients is kind of sort of, 3 minimum is nice, 5 maximum, because it's a lot of work. So it's a lot of bandwidth. Even just working with 3, it's a lot of time that you could spend, pouring into the careers of those bands or entities, as you might want to call them. Yeah. So.
Okay. And
Yeah.
do you have a team under you, or is it just you dealing with all the contracts and everything?
It's just me. Yeah.
Man, that's a lot.
It is a lot. Yeah. 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 I mean, if you're a manager and you're working with, someone like a Dua Lipa, like a really big pop star, a really big rock band, I mean, that is an all-consuming job. Like there's no end to the amount of work that you have to do, could be doing, should be doing for that type of situation. But with the bands that I work with now, it's like we're constantly always trying to make new steps forward. And so yeah, it's a beautiful job in the sense that like you're constantly working with music, and you're like, my job is working with music. That's amazing. But sometimes when you do shut it down at the end of the night, and you do, you go off the clock or whatever, you do think like, oh shit, I didn't finish that, or I didn't, and oh crap, like we're trying to book that show, and I didn't like you always are constantly thinking like, oh, there's still more work that I could do today.
Yeah. So it's not like 5 p.m. shut the laptop kind of thing. It's always, you're always on.
I mean,
Yeah.
you do that because you have to in order to try and maintain your own life as well. But it is a type of work that, could be 24/7. But still at the end of the day, it's still work that invigorates you, because it's fun, and I'm working with creative people, and my current roster is that I love these people and I want to see nothing but the best happen for them. And we've been working with each other for so long that like we've worked out all like the good and the bad kinks and all that kind of stuff. So yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. Let me ask you this, because I'm so curious, because you've been doing this for a while.
Yeah.
What do you feel like is the most challenging thing that's going on in the industry right now in terms of the advent of how social media is playing into your job, and, trying to keep a band afloat and try to keep them in the eye and the ears of their fans, and direct to fan marketing? Like, what do you find is like the hardest thing that's like been a change over the years?
Well, one of the hardest things, I mean, there's many hard things, but one of the hard things is actually maintaining a really robust, social media presence. Social media is a full-time job in and of itself these days. And the bands that I currently work with are not 24/7 social media people. And when we have a release coming out or we have something special coming out, we put a lot of focus on social media. But my job as a manager is to focus on more than social media. So it's really hard, I think, for me and for the bands themselves, to constantly want to be on social media, because like there's business to be done, there's admin work to be done, but and that stuff is important, and you need to get that stuff done, and that helps you make money as well. But then you're constantly freaking out about what, am I engaging my fans enough? Am I
Yeah.
growing my fan base enough? So, I mean, just that, concept in and of itself, like being present on social media, it's a very challenging situation. And people who do it well are either people who are obsessed with it and like really good at doing it, and or have a budget to hire a separate social media person. Obviously someone like Lizzo, who's amazing on social media, she has probably 5 people that help her run her social
Yeah.
media.
Yeah.
But for like baby bands, like they don't have 5 people. They have themselves and me. But if I'm focusing on social media, then I'm not focusing on trying to find a licensing deal or something else, So it is really challenging to do that. And nowadays the added challenge is that there are so many people competing in this space now.
Mhm.
So, even in, 10 years ago, working with air traffic controller, for instance, there were less indie bands trying to make it as indie bands. But now there's a lot more indie bands out there. And so, even, just trying to cut above the noise of what everybody else is doing out there, that's also very hard and very challenging. There's a lot of content that people can be engaged by, and keeping up with that, it's hard. Yeah.
Yeah. Are there any, like, lessons that you learned as of recent that you're like, not doing that shit again?" Like, "That didn't work," or, like, is there stuff that I mean, it's gotta be helpful too, because it's like you throw stuff
Yeah.
against the wall and see what sticks, and sometimes you find something great.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, usually the thing that I have found that does work, if you've got a single coming out or a full album or a music video or whatever, is to create an actual posting schedule for yourself. You're going to post on actual, Monday, April 17th, like literally write it all down, kind of try to pre-create as much of the content as you can so that when you do drop it, you're not like scrambling. But then kind of sort of sometimes when you get through that schedule, then you don't have a schedule anymore. And then, things might go off the rails where you're like posting less or engaging less. So planning really does help. And yeah, I have to think more on that one.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
it's so much to take care of, and, like, that's the stuff is, like, that people don't think about the non-sexy admin stuff like you were saying.
exactly.
Like,
Yeah.
it's not all just, like, rock star throwing TVs out the window of a hotel, or, like, no one
Yeah.
first of all, hopefully no one does that anymore, but, like, it's
I
it's
mean, I'm sure
just
they do.
like yeah, but it is, like, there's a large side of it that's all, like, paperwork and, like a normal desk job kinda thing that you have to take care of, like, these creative people so they can be creative,
Yes,
but then it's on
exactly.
your shoulders, and you gotta, like, manage these 3 bands that you're working with and all their paperwork that's coming in. It's a lot.
Yes, for sure.
It's just, like, astounding to me because I know enough people in the industry now that I've seen the pitfalls. I've seen things not go the way people think they're gonna go, and,
Right.
like, and that's leads to depression, and there's anxiety around that for artists and stuff like that.
Yeah,
So, like, you're also playing therapist too probably
for
sometimes, you know?
sure. And yeah, and on that tip, um, I feel, I also read a quote recently, which I wish I remember who said it, but artists should be allowed to fail. Not everything you do is going to be successful or amazing or your best song or your best piece of content. Um, you should be allowed to create, put out music that is your most beloved, and then put out some music that maybe is more niche and quote unquote less beloved or whatever. But that shouldn't necessarily be seen as a failure. You're always going to ebb and flow between, what pleases people and what doesn't please people. And I think it's good to experiment with what you're doing as an artist, whether you're experimenting visually or you're experimenting sonically. I feel like you should always be able to try new things, try things that you've always wanted to try things just for the heck of it. And sometimes you try something and it works out, being magical and like something that somebody loves. And sometimes you try something and, your fans are very honest with you and they're like, I don't really like that. But, that's going to happen. Not everybody consistently puts out, A plus, across all of their fans. Everybody loves everything that they put out. And I think if you're always kind of sort of in the mentality of, I'm a creator, I'm going to do what I like, I'm going to put my best into everything that I do. If it's, not received like my other stuff, then, I just have to like be okay with that and move on to the next thing. And I think that the people who end up being in the music space are the people who just have the type of persistence that, of course you'll get depressed about something along the way, but you have the persistence to like keep going, not give up, and just keep creating because you really want to do that. And even as a manager, it's like I have to have the emotional maturity to go through the ups and downs and be okay with the downs and just constantly striving towards, the next thing that will create, a really amazing situation. So, yeah, that's hard, but you just gotta be like any creator and just kind of keep pushing through.
Do you find that, so like talk about experimental? I watched that Jam in the Van with the People Mover, and like I was
Oh,
like, holy crap,
yeah,
this band is crazy.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so it's like, do you think there's something about the marketability of different these days? Like, because like people are so numb now. Like there's
They
so much
are.
like
Yeah,
media that you have, so people are numb. It's almost like you got to smack them upside the head with something to get them to take notice.
for sure. I struggle with this sometimes because obviously one of the reasons People Mover hit so well and so quickly, which the wonderful claim to fame to People Mover is that they got signed to Electro Records, APA booking agent, Primary Wave Music Publishing,
Mm.
before even playing one show. And it was,
How is
and
that possible?
yeah, we were all like, everyone involved in the project, we were all like, but it was because we had put together this amazing package. We had amazing songs and we had an amazing look. And obviously, a larger than life kind of look. And so that was a best case scenario where you work to put together this project. It's freaking eye catchy and sounds amazing. And all the dots connected immediately in that situation. And that was a really, really great experience and a very good learning experience because it did show me the power of having the full package together. But I also feel like, something like that is not doable across the boards. I mean, if everybody's doing that, then it just becomes like, oh my God, like now where's like the normal singer-songwriter,
Right.
I think you've always got to put together the best package that represents what you want to do at the time. And I will always want to like have good songwriters be able to get their music out there without having a gimmick behind it. Like I think, good songwriting is good songwriting. And I always want to champion the person that just is very heartfelt and has a very strong message and is just a really good, creator, performer, communicator, and will put out the standard singer-songwriter album and be, stand behind it without a gimmick. I don't think that everything has to have a gimmick, Yeah.
Did People Mover already have like a following, like a local following at the time? Like nothing?
Nothing.
Man, damn.
Yeah.
That's impressive. Well done.
It was
That's
pretty magical. It was, it was a team effort. A lot of people made all those connections happen, but it was kind of sort of like once the idea was formulated, we dove right in, created everything ourselves, whether it be, photography, initial photography of the band and initial music videos. And then once we had the whole package together, we started sending it out to people. And yeah, I mean, everything was in place. And then their first show was at the Roxy at the Sunset Strip Music Festival. And it, took off from there, basically. Yeah.
That's nuts.
Yeah. I mean, it was very cool. It was one of, my favorite times being a manager. So
Well, look at the power of you and all the people involved. That's crazy.
yeah.
I mean, I feel like I'm noticing, and I could be wrong, but I feel like the trend of music, I feel like it's starting to lean a little bit back to like rock and roll and to guitar-based music and stuff. You
Yes.
know, for so many years, it's like we never had a guitar solo on a
Right.
song, and I think that's like starting to come back a little
It
bit.
it definitely is, which is great. I actually went out with a few of my friends last night who run a licensing company, and we went out last night to a showcase for one of their bands that they rep for film and TV licensing, and it was straight up a 90s rock band.
Heck
And
yeah.
yeah, and we were all like, are we in the 90s all of a sudden?
You're like, can I
um,
stay here forever?
yeah.
Oh
But
man.
and that's what gives me like a lot of hope to bring People Mover back again, because they kind of fall in like the Black Sabbath meets
Yeah.
Kiss meets Soundgarden rock genre. And I I mean, I do feel like we are primed to go through another big rock phase. I mean, rock bands they're not giving up all over the world. They're very prominent and out there kicking ass and taking names. And the rock festival circuit is like huge. It's like
Yeah.
it's mind blowing the amount of like large, Coachella sized rock festivals that are happening out there these days. So
Yeah.
I think it's still alive and well, and we'll probably see some more really big rock bands happen in the next, 2 to 5 years.
Yeah. I wonder if it's funny too, because I wonder if a lot of these like statistical publications that are saying rock is dead and all that stuff are like just looking at revenue from record sales, which dude, no one makes money off records anymore.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I
Like,
mean, rock music, touring is like where the money's at for sure. I mean, the rock fan base, people love seeing rock and roll. That was yet another favorite thing about People Mover shows, is that I absolutely loved engaging with those fans. Like, they were fans of rock and roll, and they were there to have a good time and be social and like smile at people and talk to a random stranger next to them. And I do feel like the rock and roll community is, I probably get killed for saying this, but I feel like it's a more open community. Like, people are willing to be friends with strangers more in
yeah,
the rock and roll community than other communities. And I like that. Like, people are more open and less guarded, and I feel like it's a really good fan base that like if you're into rock and roll and you're into a certain band like the Kiss Army or the Tool Army or whatever, like, you subscribe to that and you like never let it go. Like, it's a
mm-mm,
part of your life.
I
Yeah.
mean, talk about Pearl Jam. Like I have a Pearl Jam tattoo. I mean, like I'm a
Oh, nice. Yeah.
huge, and there's Yield right there. Um,
Yeah.
but that band brings people together all
Yes.
over the world,
Totally.
like if you are like next to somebody in line at a Pearl Jam show and you're waiting to get in, you're going to strike up a conversation. Where are you from? Blah, 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 blah.
Totally.
Um, I find
Yeah.
that very true about that band. I also find it very true because I live in the jam band world too. I find that very true about people that go see bands like Fish and Mo
Oh,
and
I mean,
a
yeah.
bunch of, it's like,
Yeah.
and those bands don't need record sales to survive. Like,
Nope.
it's
And
just,
they probably still do have fairly good record sales, meaning obviously vinyl. And I'm not sure, I'd have to do some research to see like what people are doing as far as like selling like their live shows after the fact. Like, you know, subscription services like for jam bands. I feel like jam bands, if they're not selling each and every one of their live shows afterwards, like
Yeah.
they're shooting themselves in the foot because there's so much revenue to be made there, direct to consumer. But but yeah, I mean, and obviously, people like Fish fans or whatever, I mean, they're huge into like merch and just supporting their pride for those bands. So, so there's still like a physical product to be sold to these people, but it's may not be like a, you know, CD,
Right.
or
Yeah.
yeah, whatever you call those things anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
CD,
So
a
yeah,
widget. Yeah.
there's I mean, Record Store Day this past weekend.
Oh yeah,
Pearl
exactly.
Jam put out a vinyl of a show during the Yield period. I can't remember the
Yeah.
date. I mean, it was like mid '90s, but they put out this awesome show. My buddy ended up getting it, and he's like, "It sounds amazing. Like they sound
Awesome.
amazing."
Yeah,
So it's
yeah.
just, you know, that stuff kind of just continues to cycle through,
It
regardless.
it does, yeah, and like, you know, cassettes are like a novelty item again, and people buy cassettes even though they have no way to play it.
Right.
Um, yeah, I mean, if people are an uber fan of yours, they are gonna want to own like every bit of physical musical product that you put out, whether it still be a CD, a cassette, vinyl. Yeah.
Yeah. I just fell in love with Dawes last September. That's the first time I
Yeah.
heard them,
Oh
and
wow. Okay. Yeah.
I know, I know. I was
Yeah.
sleeping under a rock apparently, and now they're like right up there with Pearl Jam. But like
Oh,
I
nice. Yeah.
immediately, I'm very methodical though. Like I was like, I'm gonna digest everything they've done, but I need to start at this point, and then I will go in a different direction for each record and work my way back up. You know,
Right. Yeah.
um,
That's
and that
cool.
yeah, and it was such a like an amazing. I love when you find a band that you didn't know about and they have like 10 records out.
Right. Yeah.
And you're like,
Totally.
"What?" So, that stuff and that band too, I mean, have you ever seen those guys live?
I have, but not in a long time. I've seen them at like South by Southwest, like running around
Mm,
South by, and I think there were a few showcases where like Air Traffic Controller was like on earlier in the day because Air Traffic Controller and Dawes kind of fit in the same silo broadly together. So I'm definitely familiar with their type of music. I wouldn't say I'm familiar with an album front to back or anything like that, but yeah, I've definitely seen them at South by Southwest.
you should listen to the first record that my friend exposed me to was "We're All Gonna Die." That's the name of the
Okay.
album. You should check
Yeah.
it out. It's
Okay. Yeah.
amazing from start to finish, it's amazing. All right, Stacey, I don't wanna hold you up too much. You wanna do my lightning round, get down with me? This is a
Sure. Yeah.
little this is a questionnaire. This is like a this or that type of thing. It's goofy 10 questions. I'm gonna ask you this or that kind of thing. I'm going to put a metronome on it, 112
Oh,
altitude
wow.
BPM for a little suspense.
Okay.
And if you want to, you can explain your answers. You don't have to. You can just
Okay.
knock through them if you want. So
Right.
Blue has done this twice. So since
Okay.
he's been on
Wow.
here
Okay.
twice. All right. So first one. First one's usually Lennon or McCartney. I'll ask you that one as a side. Lennon or McCartney.
I'm gonna go with McCartney. I mean,
Okay,
I
cool.
just love the sound of his voice. His voice is like butter to me.
Oh, amen. Amen.
Yeah.
So I swapped that out for a different one this time just to change it up. But Radiohead or Pink Floyd?
Radiohead. Definitely.
Okay.
I love Pink Floyd, but hands down Radiohead. They changed my life. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right.
So good.
Merry-go-round or Ferris wheel?
Um, Ferris wheel.
Hard or soft tacos?
Gosh, I think definitely soft tacos because they melt in your mouth a little bit more.
All right.
Yeah.
Roller skates or roller blades?
Definitely roller skates. Yeah. I've never tried rollerblades.
Okay. All right. Here's a little tip to a song: bottle of white or bottle of red?
Neither anymore.
Okay. Okay. That's fair enough. Well, we replaced it with Lennon and McCartney, so we got that.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah.
Here's a Ted Lasso. If you're into Ted Lasso, movie night or pillow fight?
Ooh, movie night.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. This one might be hard. This is talking Blue. 4 or 6 tape?
Wow. Honestly, crap. That one's really hard.
Mm-hmm.
because I love all of them, obviously.
Right.
Like, I really love To Hell With You, but okay, if I had to take 4 or
I like that
6
too.
tape, I think I'm gonna go with 6 tape.
Okay.
Yeah.
I told him when he was on and we walked through all the songs, I told him
Yeah.
like that's in my top like 5 out desert albums. I love
Which
that's
one?
like my Six Tape is my
6
favorite
tape.
record
Yeah,
of
yeah,
his
yeah.
so far.
Yeah, I mean
Something about it.
the modernness of 6 tape really resonates with me. So, although
Yeah.
it still sounds classic, yeah.
That totally does.
Yeah.
Boston or LA?
LA.
Weather.
Yeah.
All right. Breakfast Club or 16 Candles?
Wow, that one's hard. I am gonna go with Breakfast Club. I watched that one more on like a repeat basis.
Okay.
Yeah.
And here's the last one, Stacey. Sometimes it's the hardest, sometimes it's the easiest.
Yeah.
If you could take one record, one album, does not have to be your favorite album of all time, but if you could take one album and erase it from your memory just so you could go back and experience it for the first time again, what album would that be?
Crap. I mean, I guess I'll go with Radiohead, OK Computer.
Okay, so
Since
they really
we
did
talked
change your life.
about Radiohead, yeah. Well, I'm
Okay,
gonna go with that. Yeah.
Okay. Sounds
Yeah.
good. It's surprising, but only a couple people have said that in 125 episodes. Only a couple people have said that album, which is
Really?
surprising. Yeah,
Interesting.
very surprising. I
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
because it is such an influential record. I mean, I feel like
Yes.
you remember that Tibetan Freedom concert thing that was happening in DC back in the late 90s?
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I went to that with my then girlfriend and my older sister Stacy and her boyfriend at the
Nice.
time, who's now her
Yeah.
husband. And that was a nutty like roster of bands,
Mhm.
obviously. But Radiohead like closed that night, the one night I
Yeah.
was there, and I had never seen them before, and that was right
Yeah.
during OK Computer.
Yeah. 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 I bet
And I
that's
had
amazing.
oh my God, I was like, I have never seen anything like this in my entire life.
Yeah.
Period.
I mean, the pulsating that like goes through the universe when you're watching a Radiohead show is just kind of sort of like, it's intense, and they're such a good live band, and that album is just like it's just audio like gymnastics. Like you can just close your eyes, put on headphones, and listen to the whole record and have a good time just sitting there doing nothing.
Yeah, 100%. And they just keep getting better too, and like
Yes.
pushing the
Yeah.
envelope further and further. It's nuts.
Yeah.
Stacey, is there anything that you want to promote of any of your artists right now, stuff that's coming out that people should be aware of?
Yeah, I mean, it was funny that because I wanted to schedule you like as late in the year as like possible, because like all this stuff is like brewing, and typical to the music industry, it's like some of it is still brewing. Air traffic controller have tour dates developing. We have a live EP that we're about to drop. And what else for them? Tons of music video content that we're about to drop soon, including a brand new music video for their most played song on Spotify called This Is Love. We have a huge, like the largest production we've ever done on a music video for that song. So we just have a lot of content to drop for that band, for Air Traffic Controller. And then for Bleu, I mean, we have an upcoming single, an upcoming record, potentially a weird random cover that we turned in. He's composing some brand new documentaries that we haven't been able to announce yet. He's got a fairly big cut coming out in May in a new genre that he's never had a cut in before. So really it's a lot of like follow Applutopia, follow ATC Music, and you'll see, some news coming out in the next 30 to 45 days of like stuff that we've been working on all year. And my biggest love-hate with the music industry sometimes is that it's like it's a waiting game. Like, that this opportunity is going to happen, but then it gets pushed back. And so,
I know. Yeah. Well, awesome. Well, thank you, Stacey, so much for doing this. Like a huge
I feel like
page.
You didn't even really ask me any hard questions. Like everything was easy.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's my bad. We'll have to do it again, and I'll come up with some really intense questions.
Totally.
We'll get deep under the current. But thank you again for doing this. I really appreciate your
No
time. Like
problem. Thanks for
really.
having me. Yeah,
Yeah,
I was
for
glad
sure.
to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Everybody else, like Stacey, hold on right here just real quick.
Yep.
But everybody else, take care of yourself, take care of each other. We'll see you next time.
Bye.